We're live.
Quick, we are live already.
Man, we're getting to be experts.
I know, we're quite good at going live with all the technology these days.
We are. I'm going to move this up a little bit so my head.
Oh, there. So we're live actually now.
Now we're live.
Now we're live. Yes. Hello, everybody. How's
Good
it
to
going?
See you guys.
Happy Tuesday.
Hope you had. Hey, it's Resurrection Week.
It is.
Yeah.
We had
or
a good
Sunday is.
Sunday.
Like, yeah.
We got Good Friday.
Good Friday. There it is. Got to have a death to have resurrection.
Exactly. Amen. Well, you guys, we are answering questions today. So you've sent in a few on Instagram, but if you have more questions while we're live today, you can put them in the comments and we will do our best to get to them.
Sounds good.
Sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Sweet. Should we just jump in?
Let's do it.
Let's jump in. I also love to see where everybody is tuning in from. I can see over there, Iowa, all over the place. Anyway.
So cool.
So fun. Okay, so.
Are we live?
Yeah, we're live.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
From Southern Illinois. We'll wait for you from Norway.
Norway. Wow. That's amazing.
This is fun. So fun. Okay, so yes, if you have any questions while we're live, you can shoot them in the comments and we're going to jump on in.
We'll do our best.
Yep.
We'll do our best.
We'll jump on into some of these questions. Okay, first question for you.
Here we go. For us.
For
the
us.
two of us.
For us. Is, how do I develop discipline? I feel like I'm wasting so much time on unproductive things.
Wow. What do you think the answer to that is? You have a lot of discipline in your life.
I do actually have a lot of discipline in my life. You know what I think about discipline?
Yes. What
it's kind of like...
That's what we're waiting for.
Yes.
Bated breath. Allie's ideas on discipline. But you are a really disciplined person. It's amazing.
I quite am a disciplined person. But you know what I think it is? Is that I have vision for the other side of discipline.
Yeah.
I feel like I enjoy structure in my life because it actually gives me freedom in my life. Because if I'm unstructured, then I just end up wasting so much time and I don't make the most of my time. So if I can structure my time and discipline it, then I know on the other side of that, I'm actually going to be able to do so much more, which is what deep down I truly want to do in the first place. But also with things that I don't necessarily, sometimes there's things in life where you're like, I know I should get up early, but I cannot get up early today. Should I listen to my body or should I choose discipline today, you know? And I think sometimes on the other side of that, that's where sometimes I feel like it gets tricky for me. And I have to go, well, I know if I get up early, on the other side of that, I'm going to feel so much better today.
Yeah.
That I got stuff done. I had time with the Lord before I went off to work. All the things that I can make that kind of logical decision and go, I'm going to get up early. I'm going to do this. But it does take discipline.
Yeah. I think I agree. I think I was thinking about discipline. So I'm very undisciplined in my eating because I don't think I have any vision. And I'm very disciplined in my spiritual life, like, my Bible reading, my times of prayer and all that. And I agree with you. I think that it's like, it is vision that gives pain a purpose.
Yep. 100%.
And then I think that discipline becomes a rhythm, so it's not really painful, right? Because it kind of becomes a lifestyle.
Habit. It becomes like a habit.
Yeah, I read my Bible every morning, every night. I love to sit in the bathtub and pray. And it just when I'm relaxed, I like to pray. I think I'm such an amped up personality that like sitting in the tub relaxes me and it helps me just to like be focused. So I think those things happen in my life because I've created disciplines. Now it feels weird when I don't do them. Like sometimes when we're flying someplace, I don't read my Bible because we're like, get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, catch a plane. Oh, I didn't, and then I feel weird because it's not in my rhythm.
Your normal rhythm.
Yeah, but I agree. I think you have to have a vision. I think you have to have like, why am I doing this?
Right.
And wherever you have that, I think that's where disciplines become natural and easy to navigate.
Right, and sometimes you're not going to see the effects of that discipline the next day. Like sometimes it takes a long time to see the fruit of that. So you didn't just... not every day do you feel
honestly, most things.
Right.
That's why it takes discipline, right? Because if I did something good today and tomorrow it rewarded me, that probably wouldn't even need discipline.
Right.
But I'm doing something today and I'm not going to see the fruit for 4 months or 6 months or a year or 2 years. That's why you need discipline.
Yeah.
That's why I need discipline, right?
Amen.
Because sometimes the fruit, most often the fruit takes a while.
Right. It's good. So good. Okay, I see a zillion questions coming in, but we're going to jump to this and we'll come back to some of those questions. So somebody asked, how do you practice? I love all these marriage questions you've been getting recently. Somebody asked, how do you practically / intentionally build your relationship with Kathy around God?
Well, first of all, I don't build Kathy's relationship around God. She builds her own, and I build my own. Like God, I don't think like. The reason I'm saying this, I have a close friend who thinks it's his responsibility as the head of the household to tell his wife to read the Bible, to pray, to do these things, and I'm like, she has a personal relationship with God.
Yeah.
It's not my job to make sure that she has a personal relationship with God.
Yeah.
Now, as her lover and friend, to be able to speak into that, like she could speak into my life, like, hey, how's your connection with the Lord? Yeah. Are you doing okay? I mean, just as any other friend would do, but I don't think it's my job, and I don't think it's her job. Like, I don't want it to be her job to navigate my relationship with Jesus. I have a personal relationship with Jesus. So, but like if I think about it on a lesser level, like let's say my relationship with the children are strained and I don't see it. I think it's wise and right for my wife, or if she had that with the kids, to say, your relationship with the kids is kind of strained. What are you, can you see that? And if so, what are you doing to navigate that? So I think there's this balance, but what I'm getting to, honestly, and what I guess I'm speaking to in my own mind is maybe a little different than the question.
Yeah.
Because I think that there are especially men who think it's their job to make sure their spouses have a relationship with God, and I think that can get really weird. You might have a different take on it. Please do.
No, I think I agree. I think I have a question for you, because you're talking about how you would encourage Kathy to speak into your relationship with your kids if she saw that was strained. But are you saying that if she sees your relationship with the Lord is strained, to let you kind of navigate with that? Lord?
She. I mean, then I think she has an obligation to say
something.
Hey, baby, it feels like your relationship with the Lord is. Are you struggling? Like as a question.
Right.
Are you struggling? Is there something going on?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, just we can't see it, right? I mean, that's why we need people around us.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is, I wouldn't see Kathy's responsibility as make sure I have a relationship with God. Like, I think that would feel weird. What I'm trying to get out of is, like, we don't control one another's relationship with God.
Right.
We do encourage one another. We can at times confront one another, right? But it's not her job to make sure I have a relationship with God. Right. It's not my job to make sure she has a relationship with God.
Right. It becomes a bit controlling. And then you have to question, what am I fearing that I feel I need to control this situation?
Yeah.
Versus letting them go on their journey.
And Kathy's relationship with God, the way that she navigates it, is very different than mine.
Yeah.
Very different. And her connection with the Lord is so beautiful and so different.
Right.
And so the way she connects with the Lord isn't the way I connect. So I think it's beautiful that she has the freedom to stay connected in the way that her and the Lord have worked out her connection.
Right. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, I saw some questions coming in.
Now there's a bunch of.
I know there's so many. So I want to jump back to one that I saw by Cliff Torres. He said, I've been a Christian for 35 years, but I'm just now understanding the kingdom. Can you talk a little bit about your transition to a kingdom mindset?
Yeah, I think most of us were raised in the gospel of salvation, which basically that gospel of salvation is the end goal is for everyone to get saved. Which, obviously that's it. But I'd say that Jesus talked about the gospel of the kingdom, where he talked about the fact that we want to heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out demons, and the ultimate goal of that is not just individually disciple people, but corporately disciple nations. And so I think realizing that we're here to extend the borders of the kingdom, not just get a person to raise their hand or pray a prayer. We're actually discipling people towards the discipling of nations. And I think that I think also I would say that most of us were raised to think that the church is the kingdom. So you get people to come to church, they come into the kingdom, and I'd suggest that all the church is in the kingdom, but not all the kingdoms in the church. So then when I look at some of the greatest examples in the Bible, people we celebrate, like we celebrate Daniel, we celebrate Joseph, Esther,
right.
We celebrate even King David, we celebrate Moses even. Like none of these people would have been, maybe Moses kind of, but most of these people were not church people. We celebrate Gideon, definitely had nothing to do with the church. We celebrate Joshua, again, another guy that would, even if you translated him to, New Testament times, wouldn't be a priest, or he was a leader of a nation. So I think we've elevated the idea of, let's say pastor, teacher, prophet, whatever. We have this like, these people are amazing, and then there's these other people like, government people and scientists and teachers and moms and dads. And I'm like, I don't think the Bible has that kind of, hierarchy. No. I think that the Lord wants to see the kingdom spread everywhere, and it's saints who take possession of the kingdom.
Yeah.
So I think that those are just some of the nuances in my mind that make the gospel of the kingdom quite different than the gospel of salvation.
Yeah, it's good. It's powerful. I see someone has asked a question here. Do angels help non-Christians too?
That's a great question.
Interesting question.
So Hebrews says that angels are servants of those who inherit salvation. So do angels help people who don't know the Lord? I'm sure they do, actually. I mean, I don't want to say, well, angels aren't helping you because you don't know the Lord. I'd say angels probably help us find the Lord, 100%. And so when you say that the angels, Hebrews chapter 1, by the way, angels are servants of those who receive salvation or inherit salvation. I mean, are they involved in our lives before we know the Lord on the way to salvation? I would guess they are. And in the Old Testament, where we see a lot of angel activity, it was often for a nation. It was often to protect a people. Yeah. I think there are angels assigned to America, and I think that someday we'll watch those videos in heaven and realize that angels kept someone from pushing that button, blowing up the world. Wow. So I believe they are. Yeah. I especially think that Christians should be very confident that we have angel help.
Yes, that's powerful. It's profound. I love it. Let's see.
Sorry, I'm answering all these questions without you.
No, this is so good. Someone asked this question. How do we engage in the process of reforming and redeeming different cultures, nations, and countries? Which reminds me of a podcast recording we just did.
Do you want to speak into that? Question?
Well,
I obviously have opinions about everything.
You have opinions about everything? Well, I think I have takeaways from that, but I almost am like, do I want to spill the beans? But I think something profound that was mentioned in that recording you just did that hasn't come out yet, so you guys are getting a bit of a sneak peek, is that when the Lord mentioned people groups, he didn't mention them just based off of their countries or where they're from, but he mentioned them in terms of their families, their family units. And I think that was so interesting. Like he was talking about like the different tribes, and they were from all different sorts of ethnicities and from different countries and different backgrounds. And so I think it's beautiful when you have perspective, when you have God's perspective. He looks at cultures and nations and countries probably so differently than we even do, where we've put borders and boundaries and restrictions on how we view certain people or certain places. So I think there's something very family about whatever that redeeming process looks like.
I love it too, and I love that the Lord could have made every flower purple or every flower red. And I love the way that God creates is that He makes us different on purpose.
Yeah.
And so it's like we're all trying to be alike, and it's like the Lord made us different.
Yeah.
And so I think celebrating cultures is beautiful.
So
as you
beautiful.
said, ethnic groups.
Yep.
the beauty of ethnicity is amazing, and learning to love what God loves and learning to discern what God discerns is beautiful. Yeah, I think all of the above, right?
Yeah.
Just interacting with people and celebrating the differences. I think that, unity isn't conformity. It's a celebration of diversity.
That's beautiful.
I think that's important.
That's really beautiful. I see another question that's come in. I think you say your name, Jessen, asked, do you have any practical steps for growing in wisdom and stewarding it as well?
Well, first one, there is a gift of wisdom. And this 1 Corinthians 12 lists the gift of wisdom with the gift of word of knowledge, the gift of prophecy. So it actually says that there is actually a God-given gift of wisdom. And I think that, when you put yourself in situations where you're in over your head, that's when this gift of wisdom often shines if you'll connect with it.
Yeah.
Also, we just wrote a book on spiritual intelligence, which I think has a ton of stuff about wisdom in it, because Romans 12 says, "Don't be conformed, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." So when we renew our minds, we think like God. But then in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, it says we actually have the mind of Christ, and therefore we have access. The verse actually says that we actually know the thoughts that God has. So here, when we renew our minds, we think like God, and when we take on the mind of Christ, we actually have God thoughts.
Yeah.
And both of those have to do with the wisdom. With wisdom. The other thing I do, and this may be a little off subject, but I don't think it is I really love the Proverbs. I'm reading Proverbs every day right now, because Proverbs are really about the wisdom and knowledge and discretion of God.
Yeah.
And so I love that. And then the last thing I'll say is, in fact, in the book of Proverbs, it says, "He who walks with wise men will himself be wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm."
Yep.
So another thing about wisdom is it's contagious.
Yeah.
It's impartable. Like
right.
it can be downloaded. It can be airdropped. So
right.
I think when you hang around with wise people, you grow in wisdom. And when you hang around with fools, you maybe not even realize it, but by osmosis, you're becoming foolish. So I think hanging around people who are wise is one of the best ways to become wise.
It's powerful. It's really.
That's why you hang around me.
Exactly.
It's just shining all over you.
That's exactly why I'm here. That's really good. It reminds me, even obviously that's a biblical proverb, but you hear people say, "Show me your friends and I'll show you where you'll be in 5 years."
Yeah.
And it's so true. I think about, who I was hanging out with 5 years ago, and me and those people are in very similar situations in life, versus if I was hanging out with a different crowd. That's just it's biblical truth right there.
Well, we say on the other side, well, he just got in with the wrong crowd.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's our way of saying what the proverb says, which if you hang around fools, you become foolish, right? So it's kind of like we kind of know it instinctively that if you hang around with the right people, you get wiser, or if you hang around with the wrong people, you kind of get dumber, and do dumb things,
Right. That influence. It's beautiful. Okay, another question for you. Somebody asked, how do you grow in the fear of the Lord? I really like this question because it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom.
So how do you do it? How do you?
Lordy, I probably need more of it. No, I think it's kind of one of those things where you're like, I think obedience sometimes feels like it correlates. There's a connection between growing in the fear of the Lord and those simple moments when the Lord's asking you to do something. If you don't have the fear of the Lord, it's going to be really easy to just go, well, maybe next time. But really taking initiative in those moments when you feel him prompting you to do something, so you grow in obeying. You grow in the fear of the Lord because you see the fruit of it. You also see the consequences of not responding to what he's asking you to do. But I think it's beautiful that on the other side of that there's wisdom. It says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. Like there's wisdom on the other side of the fear of the Lord. That's kind of beautiful. It's kind of one of those things where like, pain gives it purpose or whatever. When you have vision for something, it makes it a lot easier to have it, to grow in it, to do it.
I also think it's about presence. I was thinking about Isaiah 6, where Isaiah says, I saw the Lord, he was high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Next verse, oh my gosh, I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among people of unclean lips. And he immediately sees the holiness of God, and then he realizes that he has issues.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the honest fear of the Lord is being in his presence. Moses comes in the presence of the Lord in the burning bush moment, and immediately he falls on his face, and God says, take off your shoes, you're on holy ground. And so I think getting in the presence of God and realizing the distance between who God is in his majesty and who you are. I know this is going to sound really, really silly as an example, but I met this gentleman this week, and he comes up, and we were in San Diego, and he comes up and his hands are sweaty and he's all shaking. He's like, I've read your books and I can't even believe I'm in your presence. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just me, dude. It's good. But I was thinking about how, coming into the presence of someone that you really, really, really respect, how sometimes like you having an interview with your boss, or like being in the presence of some human where you feel anxious because you want to do well.
Yeah.
And then I think, well, what is it like to be in the presence of God, who's completely holy, has never had a bad thought, and so I think presence is a part of actually, because I think there's a difference between being afraid of God and having the fear of the Lord. I think it was John Bevere who coined this phrase that, like, being afraid of God will drive you away from God. The fear of the Lord will drive you to God.
Exactly.
So I think there's a reverence that actually attracts you in relationship.
The fear of the Lord isn't being afraid of him. Yeah. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. Okay, another question for you. Somebody's asked, any tips to rid the fear of man from your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the only right way to deal with the fear of man is to grow in love and grow in the fear of the Lord. Because if I focus on what people are going to think about my message or whatever, I'm going to create anxiety for myself.
Yeah.
But if I focus on what is the Lord thinking about this message I'm about to preach or I just preached, then I'm actually playing to the audience of one. I have one person to please, and that's the Lord. If everyone else isn't pleased but he's pleased, I'm good.
Yeah.
If I take away that element, then I am moved by what everybody thinks.
Yep.
And on our very best day, 51% of the people like what we do. So, we get so people focused. And I'll say this, every preacher knows what it's like to finish a message and then, like on a Sunday, for example, and then they call it the Monday morning blues. And then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Could have done that different way. Right. And that's all based almost always on the fear of man.
Right.
And so, I have to like ask myself, did I share what you want me to share? Were you happy with it? Do I feel a sense of relief and peace that I've delivered it as in the right spirit and right attitude? So, I think focusing on the Lord is the only way. And then being in love, perfect love casts out fear. And then realizing, there's only one Savior. It's not your wife. It's not your friends. It's not your enemies.
Yeah,
so
that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. I love that. We've got more questions coming in for you. Somebody asked, with all the turmoil in the U.S. and across the globe, it seems difficult to not lose peace and become too focused on what is happening in the second heavens. What is the kingdom's answer to all the turmoil? I mean, that's a very loaded question.
I think I'll speak to you. You can too, but I'll say one thing. Like, I have had to exit most media. So I don't watch news, Fox News or any news, CNN, anybody's news. I do have an app that I have 2 or 3 apps that have news on there, and I'll say 90% of what I do is just browse the titles, and once in a while read an article, because first of all, media is based on entertainment. I mean, it's entertainment. Like, if you understand, news is first entertainment. The way that news and media work is that they pay, most of their money is generated through advertising, which the more conflict you create, the more people will track. All of us like to rubberneck for an accident, but we certainly don't look around to see who's driving good.
Wow.
So all of those things say that news is written as clickbait and as exaggerated as possible to get you connected and to create conflict. And therefore, it is by nature the way that people, they scare people. Like, how many things have you read recently on, are we heading to, the heading will be, are we heading towards World War III? Well, just the question scares the crap out of me.
Yeah, right.
I haven't even watched I didn't read the article.
Right.
It's like,
right.
it just stuff like that, it's just, the other day I got hooked. I got to tell you, I got hooked. And it said, new virus arises. I read the entire article about the next coronavirus.
Oh my goodness.
And the weird thing is, it said this scientist thinks this, and it said nothing about what the effects of the virus were. Like, there wasn't one sentence about how severe the virus was. And at the end of the article, it says that the hospital visitations have not gotten worse. And I'm like, they took me through this whole thing just to tell me, oh, there's another variant of the virus and it's spreading so badly, and then there's nothing about, like, is it killing people? Are people getting sick? And I find out at the end of the article, it's like, yeah, it's actually no big deal. Like, literally the last line. And I'm like, that was clickbait. And I got sucked into
fear.
like, yeah. So, I think we have to, especially in these days, man, there's so much crap in so many ways. So much. I've said this over and over, but my grandfather, we see we see in 1 week what my grandfather would have seen in an entire lifetime.
Yeah, with globalization too, you're so much more connected to issues and things that you would have never even heard of in previous times.
Yeah, we know what's going on with every country. My grandparents wouldn't have known what's going on in Mozambique, Africa, that there's a genocide going on, or maybe they probably would have heard of Russia and Ukraine. They wouldn't have known what's going on in Iran and Iraq and Syria and now with Israel. And my grandparents wouldn't have known any of that.
No, yeah, you would have been concerned about your neighbor. And there's a level of like bearing the burden of your people close to you, but then do we bear the burden of the whole entire world? I don't know if in previous times that we would have even been able to comprehend what that even meant, what that even looked like, because we wouldn't have had access to that.
Yeah, and then here, and then there are whole articles about what someone thinks Putin is thinking, or what someone thinks the Ukrainian, I always forget his name, sorry, the Ukrainian, I can't pronounce his name, that's why, but Ukrainian president is thinking. Like, what he's thinking? Yeah. It's like, this is the headline.
Yeah.
And then, and I'm like, okay, so it just creates so much, like, it's supposed to create conflict. That's what people want to get in on, the conflict, and I don't agree, and they're doing this and this guy wants to genocide these people, and this guy's and I'm like, man, you get involved in that, and you don't sleep at night.
Yeah, and I think even just going back to this question, they said, how do you not get wrapped up in second heaven? But what is the kingdom mindset? What is the kingdom perspective? And I feel like you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like second heaven's going to want to do exactly that. It's going to want to breed a lot of fear and a lot of confusion, a lot of destruction. But if you're in third heaven thinking that is solutions, that is redemption, that is the kingdom. That's how the kingdom functions. And so if there's not resolution, if there's not restoration, if there's not solutions, we're probably not operating then in third heaven realm.
Totally.
Right?
No, I agree with you. And then, obviously getting what is the Lord's perspective on each of these things, And that exactly. I think that you can tell what spirit you are connecting with by by the fruit of it in your soul.
Yes.
I'm reading things that create anxiety, fear, trauma, I'm reading things that create peace, hope, answers, wisdom. So yeah, I think so. Man, I do think I think that when you're like, if there are people on here and you're dealing with anxiety, fear, all these things we just talked about, try a media fast, and I mean it sincerely. When COVID took place, about, I don't know, I've shared this before, but about a month in, I was super anxious.
Yeah.
I fasted media completely for about 2 months.
Yeah.
Almost completely. I don't know if I might have looked at it 2 or 3 times, but I mean, almost completely. I just couldn't even look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to look at it. I was literally like, Lord, what are you doing in the midst of this? I have to see what you're doing, because this creates so much anxiety, and it makes me, and when I'm anxious, I'm not a very good leader.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think if you're feeling that, you should really fast media for a season.
That's really good. It's really good. Okay, we have just a few minutes left, so I'm trying to see. Maybe we'll sneak in one last question here.
Okay.
Somebody asked, how do you focus on being present with people? This day and age.
Woo! Hi, I'm texting while I'm talking to Ellie. Let me tell you how to do that. Again, distractions, right?
Yeah.
How do you're really good at that.
Being present with people.
No, being present with people in general. I watch you all the time.
Yeah.
What are is there any tips or secrets in being there?
Right. I think I go back to a memory that's popped into my mind is when I was first dating Elijah, actually. And I remember the feeling of like, well, you have this much time with this person, and you can either become so focused about what everyone else is doing and you're constantly checking your phone, or while you're at dinner, you're putting your phone away and you're not looking at it and you're actually just really paying attention. And I have to tell you, that's a challenge. I was thinking about even last night, I was with some friends and we're chatting, and after so long, you have this temptation to go look at your phone,
see what the rest of the world's doing.
Yeah, see like, oh, have I gotten
any
notifications?
Emergencies that need me right now?
Things that are truly not important, and but it's almost like this habit. And I have to say though, it's funny. There's this weird sense of reward or satisfaction or success feeling when you don't. Like when you've had such a good time, you've forgotten about your phone, when you've had such a good time that you've been so present with this person and what they're saying and what they're going through. Because we've all been on the other end of that. You're telling this really incredible story and somebody picks up their phone and you're like, should I pause? Should I keep talking? What do I do? We just live in a time where that's possible, where we have so many distractions constantly nagging for our attention, and it's put the ball in our court to make the choice of how are we going to choose to be present, or you can choose to be very distracted.
I was in a leadership meeting just 2 weeks ago. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, and there was probably 25 people in the room, and 8 of them were doing this while we were talking.
Yeah. And
I finally said, guys, are you with me?
Uh-huh.
Because I think what's happening right now is kind of important. And they're like, oh yeah, yes, I'm with you. And a couple of them said, I'm taking notes. Okay, if you're taking notes. I mean, so, and I've done the same.
Right.
I've been the guy someone's talking and I'm like, oh, I'm multitasking, but I'm actually not. And
the message that sends across to the other person is that I have much more important things than you, which is probably not the message you're trying to communicate. It's actually probably just habit, boredom. I don't know what it is, but it's probably not the message you're trying to communicate.
About 2 years ago, or maybe 2.5 years ago, I was this couple wanted to see me, and I literally I'm super really, really busy. So they're not on my staff. They're not people I normally meet with. But I thought, okay. And a friend of mine said, "Would you meet with them?" So I met with them. It was like a 45-minute meeting, and in about 10 minutes in the meeting, she's texting, and I'm like, "This is," and then he's doing this. Excuse me,
Right.
excuse me, and I finally just said, like, guys,
What are we doing?
you waited 6 months for
You
this
want to
meeting.
reschedule?
You could, like, turn your phone off.
Yeah.
I said, you guys probably need to turn your phone off. You just have a few minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm like, and by the way, I've done the same.
Oh yeah, we're all at fault.
Yeah. So it does. It sends the crappiest message to the person. You're not. What you have to say is not that important.
Right. And I think we're giving such practical examples and situations where that comes to play. But I think in general, something I've had somebody ask me this question recently, so I feel like I've been pondering, like, how do you really stay present? I think more so just in relationship with people, because obviously there's those little moments. But I think if you have the mindset that if you do this season and this relationship with your friends, with your parents, with your family, with your girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever it is, with your spouse, it's actually setting a strong foundation for that next season versus trying to jump ahead to the next step in some relationship or to this next dream or vision you have for your life. But knowing, like, oh, I'm setting a really firm foundation. And if I do this well, it sets us up well here. I don't know. That also helps me with the present, because I think we can get very future driven.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is relationships are two-way streets.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes I find myself bored with the conversation someone's having with me because what they're talking about isn't inspiring me. But life's not all about me.
That's really good.
So, like, Kathy's, she loves to talk about horses and animals, and I don't actually enjoy horses and animals. but marriage isn't about, let's only talk about what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So, I'm learning to be, present when she's talking about something that she loves, that's inspiring to her, but that isn't inspired to me. I realize that how I communicate when she's excited about something that isn't my subject is super important to our relationship.
Oh, it's so important.
So I think it's that, it's like when somebody comes to my office and they're talking about something like I'm not interested in, but I'm a father to this movement. So I'm interested in them, even though I'm not interested in that subject. Right. And therefore I must show interest by staying focused, by responding, by behaving as if I care.
Right.
And I think that that
sends the message of love right there.
Exactly. And love is sacrifice, right? And sometimes we think sacrifice is, I'd take a bullet for you.
Well, and love is patient. Sometimes you got to sit out the story you don't want to listen to.
Often, right?
Right.
I mean, often, I'm into cars and that kind of stuff. And Kathy's not. And, she'll often, look, hey, here's the newest Corvette. I just saw a picture of it. It's like, this says, I know you don't, it's not even your thing, but the fact that you show interest, So good.
It's good. Wow. Okay. Well,
we did it.
It was powerful. How about you pray for those watching and that will watch? Yeah,
Lord, I thank you we've got Friday coming and this is Good Friday and Easter. It just reminds us so much that you're in the, Lord, sometimes we go through a death, but you're in the resurrection. You're in Friday's here, but Sunday's coming kind of thing. And I just pray for everybody who's watching today that, Lord, there would be an extraordinary kind of, hope that would rise in them. And I realize that the world is, there's so much distraction leading us to a lot of anxiety and hopelessness. And I pray right now, in fact, Ellie and I just agree right now for peace to be released to you and hope to grow in you and answers to come to you. And we bless you, and we'll see you next week in Jesus' name.
Yes.
See you Sunday, too. We hope that you tune in on Sunday because it's going to be a massively amazing
Easter Sunday.
Yep.
Oh, good. We'll see you next time.
Bye now.